Hi, and welcome to the Stay Well recordings with Rob Stevenson in Inside Out X. I am delighted today to welcome back Gregor Henderson, who is a good friend of mine and also in his day job is Director for Mental Health at Public Health England. Welcome, Gregor.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for investing more time. I know we had a good session on Friday with some great feedback and a few difficulties in the recording. So now we're here to do a rerun and a recording of some of the great stuff that we spoke about. So thanks for giving up your time. It's pretty busy for you right now, right?
Yeah, it's pretty full on. We are getting through the guidance and getting some of the voluntary and the private sector activated in the mental health space. So yeah, it's good. It's all good.
Yeah, brilliant. It's good to hear. And I should just stress for the listeners and the watchers of this that this is me and Gregor having a chat with our personal views. This is not in any way representative of official commentary from Public Health England. So please just do bear that in mind. So Gregor, it's certainly strange times and the world is evolving kind of day by day, week by week. I think everyone's starting to adapt a little bit to the new way of working. But what's your perspective on a personal point of view on what's going on at the moment?
Yeah, well, it is indeed very, very different times, and we are all adjusting to what people keep talking about the new normal. But there is at times like this, I think we're still in the early stages in the UK, very much so. And there is the usual spectrum of responses from people panicking a bit to acceptance and being more positive, and the majority of people in between. But for all of us, we need to look out for those that we're most worried about or who are more vulnerable. And again, the reasons that they may be vulnerable due to underlying health conditions, their mental state, their finances, and their accommodation, and their ability to get in supplies, and also problems with staying at home. But generally, the view goes very much like this in the psychological space. There's a stage of acceptance, and that may take some people longer than others. And then there's a stage of adherence. You're adhering to the guidance and the way that we're being encouraged to behave, or in some cases, what might come further down the line, be forced to behave. And then there is an adaptation, making the adaptations and staying well and getting some structure into our lives in these very, very different circumstances.
Yeah, and that sort of acceptance point is quite interesting, isn't it? I think there's still probably a little bit of resistance in certain quarters. What would you say to people that aren't grasping the importance of following the guidance that's being put out there?
Well, it's understandable that people are having difficulty catching up with the changing briefs day by day and the 5 o'clock press conferences. So I think that people will eventually begin to adjust, and I think the clearer that we can be in communicating that, the better. And I think that's always the tussle at the end of the day. There are practical and scientific advice to follow, and the experiences of other people around the world and what they're doing. And then at the end of the day, it's a political judgment about how to communicate, when to communicate, and what to communicate. And I think that people are beginning to adapt, but a little bit confused. And I think sometimes more simplistic messages and some clear guidelines about the simple things to do around the social isolating or social distancing rather, or physical distancing is really, really important. I mean, I walked into the office today and there were a group of 10 guys in the park throwing around a football in very close proximity to each other, sharing drinks and sandwiches. And, I wanted to go up and say, do you guys all live together? And are you doing this in a group, or have you heard the guidance? But I just walked by and I thought, right, it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
It is going to take time, yeah. Hopefully they do all live together and they're sharing their germs that way. The language we use is important. You touched on it a little bit there in terms of some of the language that we're using to describe our situation. Particularly, I'm thinking about social distancing, social isolation. And you made a great point last week on how we might think about describing that. That's not going to add to the anxiety that this has created. What do you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, so the behavioral scientists will always say keep things very simple, and social distancing doesn't sound particularly pertinent to what we're trying to do. We're trying to distance physically. So physically, we are distancing ourselves at least 2 meters apart. And very soon, any shop that's open will start having lines of, or 2 people in at a time or whatever. And I think we're just going to have to step towards that. Or the government may choose to go, okay, we're going into a shutdown and these are the rules and regulations, and this is how they'll be enforced, like they're doing in France and Spain and in Italy. So I think physical distancing is a better way, and the 2 meters apart, it makes sense. And also only going out for essential supplies. And now all of that plays on the mind, because the mind ruminates and people are thinking, well, what does that mean for me? Can I pop out to the shops? What happens if I get symptoms? And I think one of the things is that we have to accept is that, at times like this, we have to recognize and embrace our human fragility, because that is what makes us human. And we will find the challenging sides for that, all of us individually, but we'll also find the upside. For example, everyone will probably be touched by some kind of mutual aid or street WhatsApps or ways of making a contribution locally. In our block, we're all signed up to support neighbors on a WhatsApp group. And as soon as someone goes into isolation, then we get their shopping, we do their posting, we walk their dogs. So all of this stuff brings out the best in humanity. So I think it's just being aware that it's absolutely okay to be anywhere on that spectrum, from acceptance to resistance, or feeling very vulnerable or feeling very positive.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're starting to see, we've seen the people that are hoarding and exhibiting poor behaviour, and again, that's I'm sure that's understandable psychologically as well. But we're starting to see real aspects of positive humanity, aren't we? And I guess we're talking about physical distancing, but we need to be talking about social connectedness, even though we're going to be doing that digitally or over the phone or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And that is so important, and I think that stage of moving towards that acceptance and people, the best coming out, and the BBC has now got a whole page looking at people's positive stories, and on Twitter as well, you can find them quite easily, and that's great, and I think that does bring out the best in us, and gradually as we go through each day and each week, we'll add something else to our armory of how we do with that. But at this point in time, our minds are particularly focused on the most vulnerable. And government guidance is going out today or yesterday it went out on shielding. It was called cocooning originally, which has that lovely warm feel. And now shielding has got that kind of little bit of the Braveheart notion to it. But, people are being asked to stay at home and self-isolate or isolate in groups for 13, 14 weeks. And that's quite a lot to ask of people who are vulnerable. And that's where we need to get our sense of social connectivity to those around us who will need us. And again, not everybody has access to the digital world, particularly the elderly, particularly those who find digital technologies challenging, and we need to find ways of reaching out to them. So hence comes in the voluntary sector, what shops can do, what local services can do, and getting somehow the communications out to people. So there may be a lot of mass leafleting. The estimates of the people who are vulnerable are 1.25 million. And we are able to activate large numbers of voluntary organizations who will probably know who those people are. And local authorities, particularly their social care departments, are working hard to try and identify people now and reach out to them.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's great to see different organizations coming together and actually working well together. Are you getting a sense of that from your perspective?
Yeah, very much so. And we saw that with the voluntary sector organizations in the mental health space, all coming together, having daily phone calls, making really clear offers. And what we're trying to do now is add all those up and get those as quick as possible to the Treasury and the Office for Civil Society and get those funded, because voluntary sector organizations at this time are also extremely vulnerable. We need to make sure they get the support they need.
Yeah, fantastic. And just turning our attention to the workplace, as you know, I'm very passionate about kind of mental health in the workplace, and the workplace is changing for a period of time, and people are working from our homes, and having to adjust to that with our children running around. What should employers be thinking about at this time, Gregor?
Well, there's a lot of good information on the internet. You and I were sharing stuff with people on Friday. We had the City Mental Health Alliance, Mind, And the one that we both liked particularly was the Mental Health Foundation. But there's lots of really great stuff out there. But I think, I have got a long list here, and I think I just start by saying the basics, and that is people knowing what's happening with their pay, knowing what's happening in relation to their sick pay and the benefits, making sure that if you have them, the employee assistance programs are there. All employers reaching out to say, look, we can support our staff in different ways. But it is about sharing information on a very, very regular basis, setting up communication groups, absolutely essential, making sure you're having some way of talking to your people. So that's all essential. The other one is to look at the employees in your workforce that may be more vulnerable and will take more reaching out to, or may need more looking after and some form of safeguarding or special circumstances. The use of technology, as we're all doing, absolutely crucial in making that good for people and making sure people understand good practice and good daily guidance in how to work from home. But also encouraging people to personally plan and self-care and just have a list of 5 things that they're doing every day, checking in with colleagues, phoning a friend, taking breaks, doing some physical exercise. And also this, for some employers, this might be a time for learning and development and really boosting the learning and development capability for their employees, and also trying to respond to organizations who are saying, look, we've got a whole bunch of a workforce that want to volunteer, and how they can make that smooth in terms of the training and the safeguarding. So there's a lot in there. And also employers might wish to think about monitoring their staff's mental well-being, and there's organizations using the short and long scale WEMWebs to check in with different staff and just get people flowing a sense of flow of information as to how people are at a corporate level is also very essential.
That's brilliant. And I think just listening to you there's a lot that we can be doing. And I think it's encouraging to see that organizations, from what I've seen so far, are actually really focusing on the mental well-being of their people. I've been asked to commission a number of video snippets to disseminate with one firm. I've just recorded a keynote video that's going to go to another. So there's lots going on out there that organizations are finding different ways to get the message out there, which is really good to see. Yeah. And I think leaders have a role, don't they, in the organizations, because obviously our CEOs are working out how to continue business in a lot of cases, but they can't forget their people, can they?
No, and you and I and other people who are watching this will know from the information they're getting, which are the employers that are succeeding in this space with immediate information, immediate reassurance, and which employers are failing and will already be having to take the assessment of risk in terms of the backlash, and also people saying that they won't, once this is over, use their services. So it's very important that leaders have a sense of the moment and what they need to do to look after their staff, and particularly their health and well-being, but really reassure them. So the things that people are saying is, it's absolutely fine for leaders to start, having that sense of, look, we're all in this together. We're working through the uncertainties, but here are some things I want to let you know. And the tone and the style and the calmness that they can create is absolutely vital, and that they are committing to serve their workforce and encouraging their workforce to serve others, and wherever they can, being positive, but recognizing that when people have difficulties, there is somewhere or someone for them to speak to or go to. And I think displaying that sense of humanity and rather than a sense of command and control is absolutely essential at this stage, because we're all feeling a bit fragile. And I think you and I have met some fantastic leaders whose fragility or the things that have really challenged them have made them better leaders, and being open and honest about that is really encouraging, and encourages others to go, well, if the boss is feeling this, then that's okay, and we're all struggling our way through it, but I know who I need to contact in my organization if I'm having problems.
I think you're right. That level of authenticity. I saw a great video from the CEO of the Marriott Hotels Group. It was, I don't know if you've seen it, but I'll send you the link. It was really powerful, wasn't it? And I think, we can't expect our leaders to have all the answers, but what we can expect is a clear communication and saying, look, this is difficult because it's unprecedented, right?
Exactly. And again, the language we use, things like, as far as we know, from what we're aware of, we're not sure yet, but on the balance of probabilities or the things that we are hearing, that kind of, we can't be certain about anything. And yet, in these uncertain times, just being honest and the science is giving us a lot of insights and trusting that people will make the right judgments. And I think that kind of sense of trusting in your managers and the leaders in your organization and in all your employees to make the right judgments and to make the right call. And if they need help, they know where to get it.
Brilliant. And a difficult question, crystal ball gazing, where are we going to be in kind of 3 weeks, 3 months? Have you got a sense of, and I'm putting you on the spot, I know that, but how do you think this will play out? What are the sort of scenarios you could see in the future? And I know that could change.
Yeah, well, there are 3 different scenarios, aren't there? Really, one is what the scenario that will play out at the government level in terms of what comes next, in terms of the measures that are required, and we're at the early stages of that, as you know, and it is probably more than likely that the measures will ramp up and become more restrictive, and to ensure that we both save lives and have an NHS that is able to cope with what is coming its way. So that's really important. At the organizational level, it really is about adapting, and I think people should be planning for the long haul, certainly 3 months, certainly 6 months, and definitely beyond that, but also in the long haul, thinking about the recovery. What will business be like differently in the future? How can we use this time to adapt to the recovery phase? So it's like, it's like in classics in mental health, when you're admitting someone to acute unit, you're already planning their discharge and the things that will support their recovery on discharge. It's the same principles. What will support the recovery and reestablishment of the business when this is over? And I think that's really important. And the third element is socially, just making sure that people understand the changing information as it comes out. But in terms of the science, it's still not entirely clear. There's lots of mathematical modeling, there's lots of learning from other places, but different governments have different social, cultural contexts and different elements of control that they can actually demand or ask for. So I think we're into unknown territory, but I think we will see hopefully more testing. We will certainly see more reliance on people adhering to the guidance that they're giving, and we will probably, if the notion of beginning to flatten the curve is going to happen, then we'll know that in 10 to 12 weeks. Because the days from when you start putting in the measures, you start measuring that in weeks. So I think by the end of June, we'll know probably how things are going and if they need more measures and more time. So I think it's preparing for the long haul, but not as, we're going to have to get through this day by day. That's absolutely. But what are we doing to get ourselves ready for recovery? And whilst we're going through it, how do we recover step by step towards that eventual position when this will be over?
And that's I think that's a good point to kind of wind down on. Really, this will be over, won't it? This too will pass is the thing that I'm hearing out there quite a lot. And what sort of world do we want to come back to when it does pass? And my hope is it's a more human world, where we value our connections, where we work at those connections because we've had to. We'll certainly all be better at this sort of technology, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So before we go, Gregor, I know you're aware, and thank you for being involved in the exciting announcement that that I put out this weekend of G24. So the Global 24, the world's first global mental health summit, based remotely on this platform, where we're going to kick off at 9 a.m. Sydney time, finish at 5 p.m. San Francisco time, and have a lot of wonderful speakers, thought leaders, different perspectives, for people to come and connect and actually virtually connect around tables. So bringing the world together. What do you think about it?
I mean, I think that is amazing and astonishing. And I think the things like something like this, the creativity that people come out with, and Rob, it's not just a great idea, because lots of good ideas out there, but it's a great idea. It's operational, it's practical, it's exciting, and it gets people thinking creatively about not just about what they're able to contribute, but what they can learn and what they can put in place in their jurisdiction. So this level of connecting, you know, when you see the science, the speed at which they're going looking for vaccines, the speed at which they're going looking for who may be immunization tests. It's incredible. And I think in mental health, we cannot be left behind. We've got to use these opportunities for innovation and creativity, and that comes through
fantastic.
connection.
Well, thank you. And it's good to play a small part of coming up with something creative. So thank you so much. It's been really good to talk to you again on this really important issue, and thank you for sharing your perspectives. I know that there were a lot of people wanting to come and listen directly, so glad to be able to share this. So thanks again, Gregor.
You're welcome. Thanks, Rob.